Hello and welcome to Motorcycle News and welcome to the 2025 Yamaha R9. So by the time you will have seen this video, the R9 will be out in the world. You'd have seen it on their website, you'd have seen it on Motorcyclenews.com, but we're amongst one of the first people to get our hands on it in the flesh in the UK. You know, like I can touch, I can feel it. It's actually here as a physical thing. It's been drafted in here on the way to the EICMA trade show in Milan for us to get our mucky paws all over. So where does the R9 actually sit in Yamaha's range? Well, being a 9, you might have guessed already, it's got the CP3 890cc triple engine that you find in bikes like the MT09 and Tracers and things like that already. It makes just shy of 120 horsepower, and it's actually going to end up being Yamaha's flagship, most powerful road-going sports bike for 2025. So it's going to sit at the top of the tree above the R125 at the bottom, then you've got the R3 for the A2 licence, then you've got the parallel twin R7 and then this at the top. The R1 is of course becoming track only in Europe for next year, and as such you'll get a GYTR and a race version for 2025. So because we're here in person and we've got the bike here in person, it'd be rude not to have a sit on it straight away. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Oh, just throw my leg over. Oh, glad I didn't put my tight jeans on today. So what's quite interesting is I've been living with Honda's CBR 600 RR this year, which is obviously coming back to Europe for the first time since 2017. And the whole super sport sort of genre is coming back in Europe. You know, a few years ago, you'd have said it was dead and buried, but now we've got those bikes and we've got this for next year. Obviously, there's no Yamaha R6 anymore. That's just a track-only race version. So what's it actually like to sit on then? So if I get my feet on the pegs, get my hands in position, well, you know, first thoughts are clearly this is a sports bike. You know, it's quite wristy still, but it's not unbearable. There's actually a nice wide tank here. It's 14 litres, but it's quite sort of widely spread, which brings your legs apart quite nicely. And there's a decent amount of space to the pegs. You know, they're not really high like something like an Aprilia. It should be easy to move around the bike if you're on a track day or if you're getting a little bit leery on a back road. Outside of that, the cockpit's a really nice place to be. You've got this nice machined top yoke here as well. You've got adjustment. I can see nice chunky switch gear, which we'll go into later on, and a nice big TFT dash. The mirrors as well actually offer a decent amount of room. I can see my elbows, obviously, because it's a sports bike, so of course you can see your elbows, but I can see more than that behind me, which is a damn sight better than a lot of sports bikes on the market today. Obviously, we'll find out more when we do the press launch the next year, around about March time, I want to say. But for now, it's sort of, you know, an impressive first step. With that launch as well, that's when we should find out the official price for 2025. And bikes should arrive in dealers from around about March next year. For now, though, we've got a guide price of £12,250, which is, you know, getting on for £2,000 more than something like a CBR 600. But actually, you know, I think it's really fair price for something that's got such high spec, has obviously got really nice build quality. And when you consider it against things like Ducati Panigale V2, it's something of a bargain. So now I've had a sit and everything seems as it should be. I want to talk about the engine, you know, what's actually powering this bike for next year. So I already said it's an 890cc CP3 triple from Yamaha. Now this is an incredibly popular engine. If you think that's been in the MT09, the MT09 SP, the Tracer 9, the Tracer 9 GT Plus, the XSR 900, the XSR 900 GP. Going back further than that, there's also been the Nikon. It's been in a lot of bikes, and this is the latest Euro 5 Plus version of that engine, which is an absolute peach. You think it makes a beautiful soundtrack. It's got plenty of mid-range punch. In the MT09, it's been fantastic. You know, it was awarded 5 stars by my fellow road tester, Carl Stevens. So I've no doubt it's probably going to be pretty good in this as well. But you want to know how much power and torque it makes exactly, and that's why I've got this in my hand, because This bike is hot off the press from yesterday afternoon, so I've hurriedly written something for Motorcyclenews.com, and I've got some stats together for you as well for the video. First off then, it makes 117.3 brake horsepower at 10,000 RPM. And then you've got 68.6 pound-feet of torque at 7,000 RPM. A lot of people have been getting hung up on the power figure. They've been saying, oh, it's not enough on the internet. Well, I can tell you firsthand that just shy of 120 horsepower on a sports bike is more than enough for the road, especially when it's going to have some decent mid-range to go with it. Now, obviously, with peak power being made at 10,000 RPM, it's still going to be a screamer, still going to be a proper sports bike, but when you consider it to the likes of the Honda that I've already mentioned, that makes a peak power of 119 brake horsepower at 14,250 RPM with an old school 4-cylinder engine. So the reality is this is probably going to be much easier to use on the road. You're not going to have to work the engine quite so hard, but when you get to a track day and you really want to, give it the berries, the revs are still going to be there in abundance to really thrash the pants off of it. So this is the Euro 5 Plus version of that 3-cylinder engine, and being a modern Yamaha, as you would expect, you've got the latest generation of up and down quick shifter as standard, which is very welcome on a bike like this where you're going to be up and down the gears an awful lot. This is paired with a 14-litre fuel tank, and of course there's an awful lot of electronic aids which are lean sensitive for this machine to keep everything under control when you are giving it a big handful of right wrist. So holding that new engine in place is a Delta box chassis, which is, classic Yamaha sports bike. But what makes this one interesting is Yamaha is saying that the main frame weighs just 9.7 kilograms, and that makes it the lightest chassis to ever be equipped to a Yamaha sports bike. So that's a pretty decent claim to make. And then going backwards from there, we've got this nice new subframe as well, which actually bolts on, which is going to be beneficial for people like race teams. If you think, if the subframe was fixed and then you end up having a tumble at somewhere like Craner Curbs and you bend that, well, then you're in a whole load of pain, aren't you? But, just being able to replace that on its own is going to be massively beneficial if you're someone that's always at the racetrack. So sticking with the chassis as well, I just want to bring your attention to these beautiful front forks. So these are 43mm KYB upside down units. They're actually given what's known as a Kashima coating, which gives it a really deep bronze colour, which just stands it out from the rest of the crowd. You think lots of bikes these days, especially sports bikes, come with things like Olins on them, and you get that same gold colour, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love a bit of gold, but this bronze is just something a little bit different, and yeah, I'm all here for it. They're obviously fully adjustable as well, and they're actually similar units to what you'll find on the 2025 R1. They were developed in tandem with that as well. So, there's going to be plenty of composure there and plenty of ability to adjust as well to suit rider preferences. At the back, we've also got KYB, but we've got a monoshock in there. And on the other side of the bike, we've got a remote preload adjuster, again with that Kashima coating, just to make those adjustments that little bit easier, if you're going to carry a pillion or anything like that. Not that you'd want to carry a pillion particularly far on this, but there are pegs there. You should be all right for short journeys, but it's a super sport bike. It wasn't built for pillion comfort. Coming down from these front forks as well, we've also got some nice braking bling from Brembo in the form of some radially mounted Stylema calipers, which bite onto 320mm discs. Now, these surround some really nice 5-spoke wheels, which on this particular bike are sort of finished in a deep blue that's sort of matte in finish. And again, something that's really, really nice. It's a nice little touch on this. Could have just been plain black, to match the bodywork, but it's nice to have that little bit of colour on there as well. Those wheels are obviously 17-inch because this is all about the road, and they're shod with Bridgestone Batlax RS11 track day tyres as standard. So sticking with the chassis, there's just a few more numbers that I want to talk about while I'm here. First of all is the curb weight, which is 195 kilograms, which, I think is really impressive when you consider that this is Euro 5 and it's got to squidge all those catalytic converters in and stuff like that. So, just shy of 120 horsepower and 195 kilograms is going to make for an exciting road and track day bike, I reckon. Away from that, the seat height, we've already talked about this subframe and this pillion seat and stuff like that, but the rider's seat is 830mm. Now, that's actually all right, to be fair. As you saw, I just sat on the bike and I was able to get my feet on the floor. For context, I'm 5'6". Some would argue that I'm even shorter than that, and I was able to get my feet firmly on the floor because the gap where your legs go behind the tank is nice and thin. Obviously, you've got the engine up here. There's not really an awful lot going on just here. So yeah, nice and thin, easy to get your feet down, and that should help with, you know, shorter riders, perhaps riders who are making the step up from an R7 or something like that to something a bit bigger, that want that sturdy footing to help with their confidence. On top of that, while I'm here, I just want to talk about the looks because, you know, it's something that's been debated online. It's something that will always be debated with bikes like these because sports bikes are the poster bikes. You know, these sorts of bikes, whether you buy them or not, they're the things that you're going to put on your bedroom wall. For me, I just think, you know, regardless of your tastes, it's always going to be things like this that we're going to see on bedroom walls of kids and things like that. So the styling is really, really important and quite often quite subjective. But I think Yamaha have nailed it in person, to be quite honest. I really, really think this is a great looking motorbike. And that's not because there are Yamaha staff behind the camera. That's just because I think it looks flipping lovely. So we'll start at the back end. We'll start with this seat. You know, I was a little bit critical earlier about not being able to take a pillion, but you know, the actual bodywork and the style and things like that, it's clear to see it's been influenced by some other Yamaha sports bikes in the range. So I can see, you know, elements of R1, elements of R6 in there as well. And that sort of R6 theme is also carried through the midsection and some of the front end as well. This tank is nice and flat, like a proper super bike, and this bodywork at the side, whilst in sort of several elements building up this side fairing, it's nice and smooth. It's a continuous style all the way down. And again, it looks like, you know, your R1s, your R6s. It looks like an aspirational thing, basically. This looks like something that you'd want to open your garage and think, you know, hell yeah, I own one of these. Can't wait to get it out and ride it. And I think anyone that buys one who wants wow factor and wants wow factor for other people and wants to see themselves in shop windows and stuff like that, I think they're going to enjoy this bike. One of the things as well that people have discussed is the exhaust. I think it's unfair to criticise manufacturers about exhausts, to be quite honest, because there's so many hoops that people need to jump through in order to get a bike to market these days. You know, Euro 5 Plus is the most challenging of all of these challenging steps that have been added to manufacturers. And let's be honest, most people are going to put aftermarket cans on anyway, especially as race bikes and things like that. But there is in the official accessories pack a full Euro homologated Akrapovic system, which you can put straight on there as well. So, you know, I won't spend too long on the exhaust. I think it looks all right as it is. It's going to sound brilliant anyway, and you can't see it when you ride it, so who cares? Away from that, let's talk about the front end as well, because this has got wings. Most sports bikes these days seem to have wings on them, even from, you know, the mid-size upwards. Wings are definitely the flavour of the month. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's supposed to, you know, mimic MotoGP technology. It's supposed to give you benefits on the track and stuff like that. And people want, you know, bikes like this to look like the Grand Prix bikes that we watch at the weekend. So, you know, wings are welcome in my book. These wings in particular, though, are quite interesting because, you know, they're integrated into the fairing, which helps with things like airflow, which we'll come on to later on. But depending on where you look at the bike, the wings look quite different. So when you stand at the front of the bike, they look quite flat and they just look like they're just coming out of the side fairing. But if I stand here, not sure if the camera can pick it up, this area here is really pronounced. You know, not in a bad way or anything like that. It's just, you can see, depending on where I stand in relation to the bike, you can see the wings a whole lot more. And you know, when you're sat on the bike, you can't see them at all. But sort of when you're admiring your bike in the garage, once you've got one at home, you'll be able to see lots of different angles as you're making your way around. Outside of that, I already touched on the mirrors, which, you know, you can actually see things out of, which is a bonus on a sports bike. They've also got integrated indicators in there as well, which I think is a nice touch and actually should make things easier if you want to, you know, take your mirrors off and things like that for track days. You haven't then got sort of additional indicators in the bodywork, things to worry about getting scuffed or anything like that should anything happen. So you get two colour schemes as standard as well. You get this nice blue and there's a black one as well. You also get full LED lighting, as is the way these days. And there's a ton of optional accessories to add to your bike as well, including a tinted front screen. So one thing we can't ignore with the R9 is the electronics, because this is a very, very clever bike. It might not have 200 horsepower like a fire-breathing R1, but this has got some of the most advanced electronics that we've ever seen aboard a Yamaha sports bike. So I'll start with the standard sort of road modes first. So we've got 3 modes as standard, you know, riding modes are kind of a given on modern motorcycles. But obviously we've got things like a ride-by-wire throttle, which allow for other elements as well. But your standard riding modes consist of a rain mode, a sort of standard mode and a sporty mode. And then on top of that, you've got 2 customizable options as well, which allow you to adjust further parameters, things like your power, things like your traction control intervention. Now from there, I can take the dash into a race setting, and that race setting then allows you to access 4 race options as well, 4 sort of customizable settings for your track riding action. And all of the parameters in there are fully adjustable as well, allowing you to have 4 presets for, you know, whatever circuits that you're frequenting, to allow you to dial the bike into exactly how you want it from the get-go. On top of that, there are loads of other electronic aids on this machine as well. So I said earlier, there is a up and down quick shifter as standard. You also get cruise control, which is really, really welcome on a modern sports bike. I can't tell you how many times I've been doing big motorway miles and I just want to take that weight off my right wrist a little bit, and this is going to allow me to do that. You also get launch control as standard as well, to make sure that you're always the first person away from the lights or your local bike meet. On top of that, the bike can talk to your phone via 3 Yamaha apps, one of them being this. This is Y-Track. And what this actually offers is all of your onboard telemetry or your data logger, effectively. So when you're finished on circuit, you can have a look at this app and you can see, you know, your acceleration, your braking, corner entry, all of that sort of business to make you a faster short circuit rider. The last thing I want to talk about whilst I'm on the electronics is the switchgear, because life aboard the R9 is a really nice place to be. The switches aren't actually backlit, but that's okay. But all of the switches are made of like durable plastic. They look quite chunky. They look like they're going to stand the test of time, and everything is laid out in exactly the right place. That includes the cruise control, which is mounted on the left switchgear, which is exactly where cruise control should be. On top of that, as I said earlier, you've got a lovely machine top yoke. You've got an actual key as well, which is something that I welcome. How many times have you got to a petrol station and lost your keyless fob? Or, but worse than that, you've got a keyless fob, but you need to put a key in the fuel tank to open it. So a standard key is welcome. And the top of the forks as well, you know, really nicely finished, really clear in their layout and how you can go about adjusting them. So overall, I'm impressed. So I've already talked about the bodywork at length, but I couldn't finish it off without talking more about these wings, and that's because they're more than just about styling. They actually help with the aerodynamics of the bike as well. Now, for a long time, the R6 has been the jewel in Yamaha's aerodynamics crown, and this bike is it's got no smaller frontal area, but it's actually more aerodynamically efficient than the latest R6 race. And that's because of these bad boys. So basically what this means is the airflow arrives and it's directed through these wings and around past the rider. And what that allows for is a claimed reduction of between 6 and 7% of front wheel lift when you're under acceleration. And obviously less wheelie means you can get more power down, means you can go faster in a straight line quicker, which is obviously welcome when you're a racer or a track day rider. Now on top of that, you also got a sort of lip in here as well, which sits below something called an M duct. And when you're in a corner, when you combine the benefits of the wings with this little splitter as well, you can get up to a 10% increase in downforce mid-turn. So we've come all this way to see this bike. It's got fluids in it, and I think it would be wrong if we didn't give it a start. So let's see what it sounds like. So just let the TFT warm up. No clutch required for the start on this bike, simply and there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed having a poke around the 2025 Yamaha R9. There's obviously loads to come with this bike still on the channel next year, including a first launch ride, group tests, possibly long-termers, who knows at this point, but I know I can't wait to get stuck in with all of it. So if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, be sure to give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you again very, very soon.